What's up, guys? This is Teddy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video, we're going to be actually putting all these awesome skills that we are using to the test. We are going to be building our very first program. Once again, I'm going to try and make it very exciting, and we're going to be building like a small network utility. We're going to be building a pinger. Basically, it's a program that will ping other network devices. So if you don't know how a ping works, basically a ping is a program that sends a signal to another computer through its network interface. It talks to its network interface. If it receives a response, and if there's actually a computer there, you will receive a ping back. And it's kind of associated with hacker culture. This is not going to be any type of device that's that could do any damage to anybody. It's literally just going to send a signal out that will communicate with another computer across a network, and if the computer is there, you will receive a response. But gonna teach you how to read documentation, or try to teach you how to read documentation and how to actually get kind of like the wheel spinning and how to actually build your own app. I literally haven't even went through any of this. Literally just gonna build like this small little network pinger. Like I've glanced at it briefly, but we're just gonna be building it together and gonna teach you, like I said, how to go through some documentation and how to actually like build something on your own, or at least get you to the point where you can. So I literally, in order to do this, I just typed in C# and ping, and this was the very first thing that came up, and this is Microsoft's documentation. So I will leave a link in the description for this ping class. So when you're going through documentation like this, you're going to see just all different types of think of this as almost like your little toolbox. You can just dig through here, find like whatever you want to, and these are all going to be little networking utilities. And you could probably build some pretty serious stuff in here. You could probably build some really crazy stuff, and this is all included in .NET. Like a lot of other programming languages, the networking is less than lackluster, but you'd be surprised. C#'s networking utilities are actually very powerful, and they come built right in. And what do you know? The first thing I Googled when I typed in ping C# was a nice little system module.net that we can use in order to build this thing. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead, let's fire up Visual Studio, and we're going to create a new project. We're going to make this one a console app. So make sure it's a console app. Don't pick anything else. Make sure it's C#. Make sure Linux, Mac OS, Windows. You could choose .NET, but in this case, I'm just going to use .NET Core. So if you want to be extra careful and you just want to do the exact same way that I'm doing it, just choose the .NET Core console app. So let's just call this one Pinger, because that's exactly what we're going to be building. And we're going to be using .NET 6. Once again, if you're coming from a different version of .NET, you may see a main class here, which is called these are called top level statements. But if you have a main class, just imagine this whole entire thing is like the main class, and it's just not there. A lot of it, actually, when I first looked at .NET 6, like this threw me off because I didn't see the main function there. But once you get used to it, it's literally just like having like the main function is like up here, so to speak. I guess it's a good way to describe it. I don't know, maybe not, but it's relatively simple. You'll get used to it after a little bit. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to instantiate really what we want to do is we want to bring in, so if you get a red squiggly line right there, which you will, what you want to do is you want to press Control dot and bring in using .NET network information, and that will bring in our ping data type. Ping sender, so this is going to be our sender, and this is going to be, we're going to instantiate it. And of course I forgot to put the new there, so make sure that we have that, or we have that new thing. So if you're coming from another programming language, or if you just don't know like what this is, basically what's happening here is it's instantiating a class. Classes, if you didn't watch my video on the stack and the heap, classes are stored on the heap, and classes are almost like little data factories. Like if you need, like in this case, we want a ping. So the ping, this thing is literally like a little factory that's just gonna, just put like a little ping object there so that we can actually manipulate a ping. And what it's doing is it's bringing in all of this code. If you want to see here, if you didn't see what I did here, let me just slow down here. What you want to do, if you want to see like what is in this class right here, what you do is you right click, you go to definition, and you will see all inside. You will see all of the types of things, constructors that you can use. If you're, like I said, this is just introductory right now, so if you don't know what a lot of this is, don't let it freak you out, because I'm going to explain a lot of this stuff later. Right now, we're just going to, hang in there and just try and build our own program. So we've got our ping sender. Ping sender is literally what it sounds like. It's going to handle most of the code and do a lot of the heavy lifting to actually do our ping send. Look at another way to look at this is what is saying, this is the data type. The data type is saying, hey, in order for you to instantiate this, this is what this has to be. And it's almost like a little label that goes on your piece of data here saying, hey, this is what this data is. If this changes, or if this something changes with this, throw a compiler error, because that's not supposed to be happening. There's other things going on as well too, but once again, let's not get too carried away. What is the new? So whenever you create a value type, just will exist. Like you don't actually have to instantiate a value type. But with reference types, with heap objects, you have to instantiate them. And by instantiating them, you're actually creating them. You're turning on, the factory. You're turning on the levers that's going to crank out this little object, and it's going to assign it to this right here. So the compiler is going to put this actual thing that you created, it's going to put it on the heap. And if you want to use this little data object, if you want to use your ping sender, you have to call it, or you have to utilize it with this actual word right here. Because like I said, humans are good at thinking in words, computers are good at thinking in hexadecimals, and the computer sees this as a hexadecimal, but you see it as a word, and that's how it's actually going to, just grab it from memory and quickly allow you to, manipulate and send actual pings. So next thing we have is we have our ping options. Ping options are just kind of like how they sound. Nothing really too crazy here. Also, I know a lot, like many people be like, how do you know this? I actually have a CCNA. I'm actually a Cisco certified network technician. I used to actually be like one of these people who really liked playing around with Cisco routers. That was actually back when I was in high school. So a lot of the networking knowledge that I have is from that. So next thing we're going to do, what is the data that we're going to be transmitting? We're going to be transmitting learn to code. So whenever we send this data over, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pinging Google servers. So let's just say, or we're going to be pinging Google's DNS servers, just for, Google is not going to care if we ping their DNS server. So the Google pinging Google DNS server. And the server address is 4.2.2.2. So if you don't know what DNS stands for domain name service resolution, something along those lines. But essentially, when you go to Google, you're not actually going to google.com. You're going to an IP address, and the IP address and how they are connected and what makes it so you don't have to put in like actual 4.2.2 in the browser is what DNS is. So domain name resolution. So whenever you go to google.com, you're actually going to another IP address, and the DNS server is what actually is gives you that name. So it's going to give you that name, but you could also ping other computers on your network. I'd be a little careful. I probably wouldn't be doing this at work, or if you're in a super sensitive work environment, I would definitely not be building this in at work. Would anybody really care if you're pinging computers and you're not really doing anything malicious? Probably not, but it's not a good idea to be doing ping requests on a work network. I think if anything, just don't do it at work, because I do not want to be responsible for anybody getting fired, because that would be terrible. Okay, but you'd probably find a new job because you're a software developer. Still don't do it anyway. Okay, so encoding, when you send the data over, there's going to be complex ways. You can only, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but there's only certain ways that you can send data. This is what's called a buffer. And in order for the data to actually be sent over the network and actually make it to the network and the person actually receive it, it has to have a buffer. The buffer, I'll let you guys see what it actually looks like. Remember the byte? So it's an array of bytes. It's an array of very small numbers. We'll take a look at it here in a second. So next thing, we need to set don't fragment. Sometimes if you send over a certain amount, it will not actually, if you send over like 1,500 bytes or something through a ping request, which sometimes you can, it will throw like a crazy error. So make sure you put don't fragment there, because sometimes you could get an error when your packet really did reach it. Not something you need to be incredibly aware of or have a really in-depth knowledge of, but just make sure you put that there, because your program might not work. So then we're going to have the actual reply. So we've got ping sender dot send, and we also need to make our address here. We need to input the address as a string, and the string is going to be address is going to be, once again, our 4.2.2.2. And I spelled reply wrong. So let's go ahead and let's pass in our address here, because that is the first thing that we need to pass in. How do I know that that is the first thing that needs to be passed in? Like, how do I see inside of here what I need to pass in? What you do is you hover over it, and it's going to give you, if you see, let me see, I think I'm going to have to fill it out a little bit more in order to actually see what it is. So then we have our timeout. The timeout, I'm trying to think, where's my, oh yeah, timeout. That's going to set the timeout, so if it goes on too long, it'll actually time out. Then we have our buffer. It's going to be our data, our actual data. Then we have our ping, or yeah, then we have our options up here. So this is actually going to be doing most of the heavy lifting. And let me see here. Yeah. So whenever you are trying to figure out what you need to pass into this part right here, like I just didn't know that. Like I don't know that much about it. What you do is you hover over it, and you can see, if you look at the very top row, you'll see string hostname, int timeout, byte buffer, ping options. So those are variables those are things that we have to put into our ping in order for it to work. And if you look there, we also have data types within our actual function, or within our method. So the first thing that we have to put is we have to put a string of an address. It can't be an int, it can't be anything else. It has to be a string. Then we have to put in int for our timeout. So we have an int data type for our timeout. Then we have our buffer. Our buffer has to be a byte array. This is a byte array. And then of course, let me see here. Yeah, we have our actual data that we pass in as well too, which is in our buffer, because we had to pass our data into our buffer. Next thing, we're going to look at our actual, then we have to have like some form of logic, because we don't just want this thing to run and not have any type of conditioning or anything. So, or condition. Trying. What's going on here? I think my caps lock is on. There. Nope. What is going on? The IntelliSense is going crazy. Reply that. There we go. Yes. So then we have the reply of status. Where is status coming from? Let me just get this part first, and then I'll talk more about like what's going on here. So IP status, IP success, console.writeLine success. Okay. So what is going on here? Go click on this, right click, go to definition. So you will see here we have a place where it says status, and once this actually completes, what it's going to return, let me see if it says what it's going to return. Yeah, what it's actually going to return, if you see a couple lines down, you'll see a thing that says returns. So when you see returns, that is what it's actually going to that's what it's actually going to return. So it's going to return another object, and that's how we get this down here. That's how we're actually, it's returning this thing, and once we get that object back from it, we can actually use the properties or the fields on it that it has with it in order to actually be able to perform some type of logic. So next thing is we have the IP status. So this is going to be another, this is going to be brought in from .NET. And what IP status is, if we take a look at it in here, this is just kind of like a nice little object that Microsoft is giving you in order to be able to, you know, do these types of things, because you're going to be doing this a lot. And what it's doing is this little IP status thing doesn't have anything to do with the ping reply. This IP status has to do with the actual networking utilities that Microsoft gives you. Microsoft knows that you're going to be checking, you know, a lot of IP statuses, probably a lot if you're building, you know, actual network interfaces, and it's just Microsoft's way of saying like, hey, you know, I got you, and you can, you know, use these tools so you don't have to be like, if IP status is equal, like if we didn't have that, we would have to say IP status success, and we'd probably have to design like our own like type of programming. But when Microsoft does it for you, you get like this nice little enum, and it does everything for you. By the way, trick question while we're here. What is an enum? If you know what type of, you know what an enum is, or is an enum stored on the stack, or is an enum stored on the heap, or is another way of saying it, or you could answer it like this, is an enum a value type, or is an enum a reference type? And I'm not going to answer it because I want people to answer in the comments. So answer down in the comments if you're watching this. So when we reply, we don't just want to, okay, so we could do this right here. We could go ahead, like this is actually a working program. We could run this. Let's see if it runs. Yep. So our software is technically working, but we're just returning success. So we just went out into the network, we pinged Google, a response came back, and that's Google, or this program is saying, hey, this is working. So what we need to do here is we need to actually put the data that we are getting back. So let's go ahead, let's say response. We already know our response is good. And let's go ahead and do some good old-fashioned string interpolation like I taught you guys a little bit earlier. Then, let's see, we need to use our object that we created. So we created that object, and then we can go down in here, and we can see if, yeah, let me see here, string status. We can reply, yeah, we can get our status back. Ping reply IP status. Yeah, and then just for safe measure, I think it will convert it, but let's just go ahead and convert that to a string because I don't want to deal with it if it's not going to let me. And let's go here, round trip. So we're going to see how long our trip was back. And then once again, we are going to do some string interpolation because we want to see this beautiful little reply. And then we need to get our reply right here. And then we can put our round trip time. Round trip time. And it's going to return a long, so we don't have to change it. If you always have to be cognizant, you always have to be aware of what type of data type you're returning. If you don't return the data type, if you don't return the right data type, it could cause issues in your program. So always check to make sure what type of data type you're bringing back, and that's how you do it. You just hover over it. If you ever want to see like what something is, what you do is you just hover over it. So like in this case, we have this reply, but like it's like even like I don't know what a reply is. So what you do if you want to try and figure out what something is, you just hover over it and it will tell you what it is. So a reply, it looks just like a reply that we made, but it's actually this right here because once again, we made this object. We created this. We created this world. Okay. I'm getting a little crazy here. I need to calm down. So, all right, we're going to do more string interpolation. All right, and then we need to go back to our object here. Go back down. Trying to see. Oh yeah, we need to go to options. So let's see here. Ping reply.options. I'm not exactly 100% even sure what that is. So I'm just going to dive in here and see like what this is. Yeah, ping options. Okay, yeah, so that's our... So a lot of times I don't even know what's going on in the software. In order to figure out what's going on, like I just have to dig into like the actual source code, quote unquote source code. Like you can dig into here and you can get like a summary of what this is. So we're like doing like real developer stuff here. We're not like, you know, just copy and pasting code. We're like actually looking at it. And I hope that's, you know, kind of like what you guys, you know, strive towards. Because don't be somebody who just... When you first start programming, you will have to just copy and paste code, but don't be, you know, eons into your career and you're still copying and pasting code. Like try to figure out, you know, if you can, what's going on. Don't I'm not gonna do that. That's wasted time. So we'll do buffer size just to see, you know, just for shits and giggles. The most important part is our response. Did we get a response back? Then we're going to reply .buffer .length and boom. So let's go ahead. Let's see how this works, and then we'll step through it with a debugger in a second, and then we'll take a look at it. All right. .NET's freezing, and voila, we have a success. If you programmed it right, that's what it should look like. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of step you through, and we're going to actually take a look at like what's going on under the hood and just kind of describe to you guys like what actually is going on. So once again, we're pinging 4.2.2.2. Out there is probably probably $100,000 server that's handling all these requests, and you're about to ping it. Oh my gosh. The anticipation. So when we create this ping sender, watch what happens. There's going to be probably a pretty big object in here. So look at this part right here. This means that this is stored by reference. This is being stored on the heap. This is going to be a big object. So whenever you see these little curly braces, this is VS Code's way of saying, or Visual Studio's way of saying, hey, this isn't here. Do you want this? And if you want this, if you want to see what this is, or this is this is my or Visual Studio's way of saying, hey, when it has these little squiggly lines, this is a reference object, and do you want me to go get this? This isn't here right now, but I can go get it for you. Do you want it? And then if you want it, that's what you do. You click the down button, it's going to go get it, and then you can do the exact same thing. You can see what's going on. So it's created our actual ping, and then we have our ping options. Let's go ahead and see what's inside ping options. Once again, it's a reference type because it's a class, and we are declaring it. We are instantiating it. We are putting this on the heap. We go down here. What do you know? We've got our we got our timed alive. We got our don't fragment. We're making sure that we set our don't fragment to true. So what we're going to do, this is actually false right now. So watch what happens when we actually execute this options don't fragment. It's going to set it to true. So this is another really cool thing. Pay attention. What happens is, you see, before it was false. Now it's true. What happened was we went into this part right here. We went in and we manipulated our object, and now this object as well is the same thing because it's a reference. It's stored on the heap. Oh, I hope that makes sense. I hope that like somebody's like light bulb just went off and they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm a genius now. So string, we don't even need to talk about strings. Then we have a byte array. Then we're gonna have our buffer. So let's see what a buffer looks like. And this is, whenever you see a buffer, this is what it is. It's just this giant like array. Literally, it's just like a giant array of any number below 255. A byte, if you didn't watch my other video, a byte is below 255, and it's literally just an array of them. Then we have our timeout, which hasn't been set yet. We're going to set it. It's an integer. Super simple. Don't even need to explain that. Just kind of is what it is. So next thing is that we have our ping reply. Ping reply is another class that we have to instantiate. And what this is going to do is it's going to go out. It's going to do the actual ping request, and then it's going to take it and it's going to jam it in that object. It's going to say, I'm going to go out, I'm going to jam it in this object, and I'm going to bring it back for you. And then once I get it back, I'm going to update my status, and then if it's good, you can actually do something with it. So I hope I didn't confuse the ever-living shit out of you, but yeah. If you don't know what that is, like I said, we're just kind of having fun here. Don't freak out, and I'll, after a while, all of this is going to make sense. Just don't worry about it. So we've got our actual reply back. We've sent our buffer. Next thing is we have our actual status. The status is a success, so we can actually move on. And that's when all of that data that was jammed into that reply is now back, and we can display it into the console. So we're going to go down. We're going to do all our consoles, which are actually happening right now. We're in our console right here, and our program has executed. Wait a second. Yeah, sometimes Visual Studio freezes up like that. Don't know 100%. Let's see. Oh, I edited it. Okay, so we'll just go back up. We'll just run through it one more time. I'm not going to explain any of it. If you want to, just watch what it was before, and we'll execute it just to make sure that it works. I hope that it works. That was weird. Make sure that we get our buffer. Yes, it returned the buffer, our size. Our computer program is over. Congratulations. You have now just designed a networking tool that you could use. You could possibly add on to it and do all types of crazy stuff. Really build onto it. And I hope you maybe build something cool. If you don't, that's okay too. You can just continue on with the course. Anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you for watching.